Welcome to another episode of Auto Mundial, the weekly car news and review show.
This time we're taking a look at the long-awaited Volkswagen ID Buzz, a 5-seat MPV with retro styling and an electric powertrain.
The new Vauxhall Grandland takes on the Ford Kuga, and we take a look at BMW's rather conservative electric SUV, and we hear the V8 roar of the Jaguar F-Pace SVR. That's all coming up, but first, the news.
A panel of judges have announced the 2022 Women's Car of the Year winners. Now in its 12th year, the jury judged 65 different models, whittling them down to 6 finalists, one for each judging category. Jeep's new hybrid Wrangler took the win in the 4x4 class, while the Audi e-tron GT won the Performance Car Award. The Ford Mustang Mach-E won in the family car category, and the large SUV class was topped by the BMW iX. Kia claimed the family SUV category with its new Sportage, with Best Urban Car going to the Peugeot 308, which went on to win the overall Women's Car of the Year top spot. The panel, made up of 56 of the world's top female motoring journalists, praised the Peugeot's performance and driving manners. Of course, as we and the organisation are keen to point out, there is no such thing as women's cars. The objective of the awards is to choose the best cars of the year for all consumers, with the world's only judging panel made up exclusively of women.
The Vauxhall Grandland X was never much of a contender in the affordable family SUV class. It lacked the style of some rivals and the quality of others. Now though, Vauxhall's had another go with this, the new one. Now called simply the Grandland, it's piqued our interest with its bold new look. Gone is the bulbous shape of the old car, and in its place is a sharper, more up-to-date design. The boxy front-end shape will look familiar to some, as the new car looks very similar to the current iteration of the Mocha. In fact, Vauxhall is currently refreshing its lineup, drawing inspiration from the GTX concept revealed in 2018. The flattened bonnet is enhanced by the squared-off LED daytime running lights and light bar running along the width of the car. The whole thing comes together to give an almost retro feel. This is a path many car designers have started going down in recent years, especially with electrified vehicles, and we're certainly not complaining. The old-school boxy feel doesn't quite carry on to the flanks, where the Grandland begins to look like just about anything else in this class. Under the bonnet, the new Grandland gets the same 3-cylinder 1.2-litre engine as the old car, producing 128 brake horsepower. More interesting though are the hybrids. First up is a plug-in hybrid version combining a 1.6-litre 4-cylinder petrol engine and a 13.2 kilowatt battery. The whole thing puts out 222 brake horsepower. When the fossil-fueled half of the powertrain is turned off, the electric motor will run for an estimated 39 miles at a top speed of 84 miles per hour. Using a 7.4 kilowatt charger, those 39 miles can be replenished in an impressive hour and 45 minutes. A more powerful version with 300 horsepower will be joining the lineup in the near future. Keeping it competitive in this fiercely fought segment of the market, Vauxhall has fitted the Grandland with some rather clever headlights that illuminate the road in different ways depending on the conditions. The tourist mode is the most intriguing, turning down light intensity to avoid blinding cars when driving abroad, negating the need for those horrid stick-on deflectors. Jump in the cabin and it's all rather flavourless. The dull colours chosen to decorate the seats and dashboard, even in the so-called ultimate trim level, could do with a dash of spice. Plus the infotainment screen does feel a little bit of an afterthought. It looks like it's been placed in front of the air vents. Though it has to be pointed out that the controls are well laid out, the centre console is fairly clutter-free, while most of the infotainment can be controlled via buttons on the steering wheel.
If the Vauxhall wants to battle for top honours in this class though, it'll need to beat some of our favourites like this, the Ford Kuga. Like the Vauxhall, it isn't going to wow you with its sharp interior design or its performance. It is well made though and very practical, the most important qualities for any family car. A plug-in hybrid version of the Ford hits similar power figures to the Grandland thanks to a 2.5-litre 4-pot. And while it may look like a Fiesta that's had rather a large Sunday roast, we happen to think it looks rather good.
And then there is this, the all-new Kia Sportage. A bit of a departure from the plain Jane styling of the old car, this new one looks great from any angle. And it's more than just a pretty face. It's easy to forget that the Sportage has been with us in some form or another for almost 30 years. Inside, all models come packed with all the latest technology, while under the bonnet there is an incredible array of powertrain choices. You can have 2- or 4-wheel drive, petrol, diesel, plug-in hybrid or mild hybrid. What's more, it's well priced, starting at well under £27,000.
Despite its new good looks though, the Vauxhall still fails to wow us versus its peers. Prices start at just under £29,000, with the plug-in hybrid coming in at about £4,000 more.
BMW design, as of late, has been bold, divisive and anything but subtle. It seems odd then that for its new full EV, the brand has, on the face of things, played it quite safe. In fact, at first glance, it looks like a regular X3. Based on the same mid-size SUV platform, this electric X3, or iX3 as it's known, looks to be a much more mainstream product than the brand's previous electric efforts, the beautiful i8 and the excellent i3. It does get a few styling tweaks though to help it stand out from its internal combustion counterparts. The front bumper has been smoothed over and the kidney grills have been filled in to improve the aerodynamics in the name of efficiency. To further aid this, it gets some aero alloy wheels which improve the car's drag coefficient by around 5%. At the back end, the rear bumper has been given the same smooth treatment as the front one, and there are 2 blue plates where the exhaust pipes would normally live. Inside, family buyers will be pleased to learn that despite the extra batteries, cabin space remains largely unchanged. It does lose 40 litres of boot space, but there's still plenty of room for passengers. The rest of the interior is identical to the standard X3s apart from a few flashes of blue and an iX3 badge on the centre console. It may not be quite as flashy as a Mercedes EQC cabin or as minimalist as a Tesla's, but while the design is starting to feel its age, everything is logical, easy to use and well put together. From launch, there are 2 trim levels to choose from. The Premier Edition comes as standard with the panoramic sunroof, adaptive suspension and semi-autonomous capabilities, as well as all the usual luxuries you'd expect to find in a BMW SUV. For an extra bit of cash, you can step up to the top-of-the-range Premier Edition Pro. This adds a fancy Harman Kardon stereo, a heads-up display and gesture control. Powering the iX3 is an 80 kilowatt-hour battery with drive going to the rear wheels. It produces 282 brake horsepower and can hit 62 miles per hour from rest in under 7 seconds. The range is decent enough at 279 miles, although that won't be troubling rivals from Tesla or Jaguar.
Speaking of which, this is becoming an increasingly popular corner of the market, and the car to beat is this, the Jaguar I-Pace. In EV terms, the Jag has been around for a while now, but it's still just as impressive as it was when we first saw it in 2018. While it isn't quite as commodious as the BMW, the Jag is a great family car with lots of cabin space and a decent boot. On the road it feels sporty but not uncomfortable, and while there's plenty of performance, it'll hit 0 to 62 in 4.8 seconds, keep your right foot buried and you'll soon see the 292-mile range figure start to tumble. On the style front, the I-Pace still looks fantastic inside and out. By using a bespoke EV platform, Jaguar was able to bring the cockpit forwards, creating a unique design in the process. The interior, while fancy, is not as ergonomic as the BMW's. JLR's new Pivi Pro infotainment system is better than the old one, but it can still be fiddly to use all of the touch-sensitive controls on the move.
Overall, though, the Jag is still our class favourite. The iX3 is a step in the right direction for BMW, though, and a statement of intent for more EVs to come.
After the break, Volkswagen's new ID Buzz. Still to come, VW's colourful new electric MPV, but first...
The performance SUV has long been dominated by the Germans. Every company from VW right up to the Porsche has various track-inspired family hauliers to choose from. But what about the rest of Europe? Well, one of our favourite fast 4x4s is this, the Jaguar FPace SVR. If you simply must have a 2-ton gas guzzler that can keep up with a sports car, it may as well have a supercharged V8 that sounds like a Norse god shouting. And now, after just a couple of years on sale, it's been updated. This is the new one, and like the regular F-Pace, it's been treated to a host of new gadgets and gizmos. The F-Pace SVR still uses JLR's shouty 5-litre supercharged V8 that we previously found in everything from F-Types to Range Rovers. In this guise, the engine produces the same 542 brake horsepower as the old version, but the new SVR is now good for 0 to 62 miles per hour in 4 seconds flat, thanks to its new launch control system. That puts it right up there with the very fastest in this class. Unsurprisingly, the Jag sounds awesome. The roar of that V8 is trumpeted through the quad exhausts protruding from the bespoke rear bumper. The SVR gets a much sportier look than the regular car, with a louvered bonnet, subtle rear spoiler and a lower, wider body kit. The whole car looks muscular without the garish trim and add-ons you'll find on the Range Rover Sport SVR. It's clearly a high-quality product, but is it good enough to justify its £78,000 price tag?
Well, it needs to beat this, the current car to beat in the class, the powerhouse Alfa Romeo Stelvio Quadrifoglio. Now, like the Jag, the Stelvio is definitely a looker and has been subject to a recent refresh. It builds on the standard car with wider wheels and a lower, more aggressive stance. Using much of the chassis from the Giulia Quadrifoglio saloon and the same twin-turbo V6, the Stelvio puts out 503 brake horsepower, exactly the same as the smaller Alfa. It's down on power versus the F-Pace, but thanks to its lower weight, it beats the Jag to 62 in just 3.8 seconds. Both cars can do almost 180 miles per hour, so there's little to split them on paper. So then, how do they compare to drive? Well, twist the Alfa's DNA dial to dynamic and the whole car feels immediately alive. It feels every bit as lively and energetic as the Giulia, with rapid acceleration and incredible grip. The exhaust makes some satisfying crackles on upshifts, and you'll have to really push it to notice the car's bulk. Obviously, being a high-riding SUV, it has a fairly high centre of gravity, which you will notice when cornering hard. But overall, Alfa Romeo has done a superb job at making the Stelvio feel almost like a performance saloon.
The Jag is a little more sedate. While the V8 still makes a glorious sound, it's not as conspicuous as the howling V6 of its Italian rival. And it's the engine that will be the main draw to buyers, and the noise is not as embarrassing as it is in the Range Rover Sport SVR, which uses the same motor. It looks classier too, and the materials used are on a par with its sister car. The Jag then is right up there with the best in this class. If you're after an SUV with the performance of a super saloon, the big Jag should definitely be on your shortlist.
Few vehicles are as iconic as the Volkswagen Type 2, synonymous with freedom and adventure. It's had many names over the years: Combi, Transporter, Multivan, and now it has another one, ID Buzz. Finally, after decades of concepts and design studies, Volkswagen has finally revealed its production-ready electric microbus. With its 60s-inspired two-tone paint scheme and its big VW badge on its stubby front end, there's no mistaking its lineage, although the diesel Caravelle will remain on sale. There's no denying that it looks great. No strangers to retro styling, VW has thrown everything at the ID Buzz to ensure it stands out from just about anything else on the roads. The boxy proportions will be familiar to anyone who's ever had their own VW bus, and the squared-off tailgate looks like maybe, just maybe, it could be housing a clattery air-cooled flat 4. Safe to say, it isn't. As its ID moniker would suggest, this new Buzz is all-electric. Like the original Volkswagen Type 2 vans that were built on Beetle platforms, the ID Buzz is based on the ID3, with the same running gear as the electric hatchback. It gets a 201 brake horsepower motor driving the rear wheels with a 77 kilowatt-hour battery. VW hasn't yet announced the Buzz's range, but we'd expect it to be somewhere in the region of 300 miles. With a powerful enough source, it will fast charge from 5 to 80% in half an hour, but more impressive is the bi-directional charging. This standard feature will allow you to feed energy from your car back into the grid. And we do say car rather than bus, as rather disappointingly, the ID Buzz has only 5 seats. It's less of a van then, and more of an oddly shaped car with sliding doors. To be kind, it's an MPV, like the new BMW 2 Series Active Tourer we looked at last week. However, with no third row of seats getting in the way, the ID Buzz has a truly enormous boot. Capacity is a whopping 1,121 litres. Fold the seats down, and that grows to 2,205. For buyers who don't need the back seats at all, there is a commercial version that does without the side windows. Like the ID3, the Buzz gets a light, airy interior with lots of colourful details, continuing the retro theme into the cabin. The light-coloured plastics might not be to everyone's tastes, but they do a good job of mimicking the painted dashboard and Bakelite steering wheels of the classic combis. There's no leather to be found anywhere, with VW making use of recycled alternatives with the goal of making the ID Buzz carbon neutral from manufacturer to delivery, something we hope to see more of in the industry. Naturally, there's a big infotainment screen in the middle of the stylish dashboard. As standard, it's a 10-inch screen with wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but you can pay extra for the 12-inch screen seen here. Unfortunately, it also gets the slightly tricky touch-sensitive climate controls from other ID cars, but it's a small irk in an otherwise fabulous interior. Prices for the Buzz are yet to be announced, but production is due to start later this year, with the first customer deliveries expected in the autumn.
Join us again next week on Auto Mundial as we take a look at the all-new Renault Austral.